Okay, part two. This is after it's dried in front of a fan for about 15 or 20 minutes. I've taken the gun out to obviously take that high-tech protective device off of it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hit my single edges with my antler. Now when you do singles, and it's still pretty wet, folks, be careful. If you drag by accident, you're going to mess this up, because this is kind of like the point of no return for holsters. I go around my single edges. See? Anyway, I go in a continuous motion and I hit all of them. Now again, these don't have to be perfect right now. I also tie my doubles into my singles right now. You don't want to put too much pressure without the gun in it. The doubles still look good. Here's my baby, my daily carry. Now the holster still is wet. It's probably at about 75% dry, which is dry enough I'm not going to worry about it hurting my gun. So anyway, because we took the gun out, it took all the pressure the leather had on that gun away from it. So I want to just hit the perimeter pretty good to get that initial pressure back in. Now a lot of this is going to come back with the detail molding I start in a second, but I want a good foundation to start that molding from. You want the leather against the gun. So that's why anytime you're molding and you take a gun out of the holster, go back over it real just briefly. Okay, this is where I start some detail molding. Now if you've got long fingernails, clip them. If you drag across this holster or you slip, you may not be able to save it. So anyway, I go to my medium, my little bullet. It's got a pretty nice, perfect size and shape. It does some really nice molding. And I tie my ejection ports into the perimeter of the slide. I know you can't tell, but I'm using a lot of pressure for this. This is where you got to be careful. I use a light. You can see my light here. Okay. I use the reflection of the light to check my lines and my smoothness. Okay. And all I'm doing is going over the gun. And like I said, I know this gun intimately, so I know what lines to put in it and what I don't want to put in it. That's not bad for the front. So for the back, the perimeter, in other words, this line and this line of the gun, hold the gun in place in the holster. That's the only thing they do, okay? There's no retention. It keeps it from moving around. And these really are critical, because if the gun moves around in the holster, it's going to wear the finish, okay? So the better your perimeter molding is, the less finish wear you're going to get on your weapon. Make sense? Good. There will be a test on this, so take notes. All I'm doing is going around the gun and putting quite a bit of pressure. Now this is really about all I can do with this tool. The molding looks good. Like I said in the first video, there's 2 points of retention for a holster. The outline of the gun keeps it in place, Okay, keeps it from moving around, prevents finish wear on the gun. The trigger guard right there and right here and the ejection port are the only two points in a leather holster that actually retain that gun. And as I'm molding, I'm looking at the reflection and seeing if it's got the lines I want. See that little slip right there? Hit that a little bit. I can't save it, but it's on the back, so it's one of those you kind of just say, oops. Now this horn is extremely sharp. If I slip with this, I'm gonna bake this thing, so I have to be really careful. Now I don't want tons of detail molding in the back. All I'm doing is trying to give it a little bit more crispness, if that makes sense. And because this is a smaller surface area, the amount of force that I apply with my hand is multiplied. So I can really get some force with this thing. If you don't understand that, go back to physics, okay? Anyway, back to the perimeter. Now you can see the lines are really starting to pop on that line. Now, just like before, I tie my ejection port into it. That looks good. Now CZs are very unique. The slide rides inside the frame, as opposed to a Colt, the slide rides on the outside of the frame. So CZs, you have this nice line that you can always add, and it does give it a much different feel to the holster. I don't want tons and tons and tons of detail on this. I want a nice flow. I know guys that go in here and make this nice and crisp and do the same thing to the trigger guard right here and here and put a divot here. I don't want that for this holster, okay? I just want it to be nice and clean and have a flow to it. So, honestly, that doesn't look bad. I could let that dry, and that's a good holster. So if I decide to put a little more detail into it later, after it's, say, 90% dry, and you can tell a holster, okay? If you guys want to put a final crush on a holster, that's what I call the final stage of molding, okay? You can tell because the outside will feel dry and warm, yet the inside of the holster is going to feel cold, okay? If the inside feels cold, that means it's about 95% dry, okay? And if you want to put a final detail molding in it, you can, okay? But be warned, if you slip at that stage, it's baked. You'll never get it out. So anyway, that's it. Thanks. Appreciate it.